Ziggy and the Will family have decided on their next GM. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah who was previously with the Philadelphia Eagles, the 49ers, and Cleveland Browns, is now the Minnesota Vikings' next GM. Has a very good track record. He started out by getting a bachelor's of economics with Princeton. Economics, huge when you're going to be a GM, because handling your money, handling that salary cap, that is what the Minnesota Vikings especially need right now, as apparently we're $13 million under the pit. So he has some big decisions to be made this offseason, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he's going to do it, because he mentioned that obviously he wants to bring us to a Super Bowl. He wants to bring us our first Super Bowl win. He hasn't mentioned really how he's going to do that. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this really unfold going forward. But he had a bachelor's from Princeton. After that, he got his master's at Stanford, also in economics. He spent years before ever being in the NFL. He spent years as a portfolio manager and commodities traders on Wall Street. Now I'm hooked. You got me in. I'm all in for that. We need someone who can be able to maybe understand that giving a quarterback over 20% of your salary cap is not a good thing when he can't completely carry your team. Okay, I love Kirk Cousins. A lot of people think I'm a Kirk Cousins hater. I love the guy. I think he's great. I don't think he's over 20% of your salary cap great, because our goal is to win a Super Bowl. So one thing looking at this, he hasn't mentioned really the decisions that he's going to be made, because it's so hard to right now say what you're going to do, because your first job is obviously just finding the right head coach. That is your first job, finding the right head coach, and it's looking bright for the Minnesota Vikings. After that, his years in the NFL, he spent time with the San Francisco 49ers as their manager of football research and development. In 2017, when John Lynch became their GM, was promoted to director of football and research and development. Great, love to see it, love to see it. Cleveland Browns vice president also in 2020. So has spent some time with some previous teams. And one thing you'll know, he was here for the 49ers, here with the Cleveland Browns. One thing you'll know, the two head coaches that he's been under, Kevin Stefanski, Kyle Shanahan. What do Kevin Stefanski and Kyle Shanahan have in common? They're both young, offensive-minded head coaches. What do the Vikings need right now that I've been saying multiple times? We need an offensive-minded head coach. Now we got this guy coming in who will most likely bring us that offensive-minded head coach, that young offensive-minded head coach that I have been asking for the Minnesota Vikings for some time now. No, some of the top potential decisions that Adofo-Mensah will have to make is obviously, what is he going to do with Kirk Cousins? Whether you love Kirk Cousins or a Kirk Cousins hater, or you're like me and you just want to see the team win, one thing we all can agree on, Kirk Cousins is not worth $45 million of guaranteed money. Kirk Cousins is not worth over 20% of our salary cap. I think we all can agree on that. So what is he going to do? He has a few options here. Number one, you can play Kirk Cousins under his 2022 contract, which, yes, it's a lot of money, but as long as you don't extend him, that's what matters. Another option is extending Kirk Cousins, which is just stupid. I don't think at all that he should extend Kirk Cousins. As a matter of fact, I am almost positive he will not extend Kirk Cousins, because of how overpaid of a contract that it is. And then you look at maybe trading him away. That I'm all in for. If they trade away Kirk Cousins, they would likely trade him away into the AFC, where you have multiple trade destinations like the Cleveland Browns, where he just came from. Maybe he'll make a trade with Kevin Stefanski, as he just came from there. Denver Broncos is another option. Broncos are a quarterback away from competing in their division, and their division is one of the worst, the toughest in the NFL. So they definitely would like to have Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. Maybe they can find a quarterback in 2022. Pittsburgh Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger is obviously retiring, so maybe he'll look to trading away with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think the Steelers will take him up on that contract. Just don't see it happening. That's not the Steelers kind of ball, but that's another option as well. Indianapolis Colts is another option that the Minnesota Vikings could trade Kirk to. Colts is pretty tough, though. I just don't think the Colts are going to go the same route they've been going. Colts haven't drafted a quarterback in the first round since Andrew Luck. So they've been really throwing band-aids at the position, and it hasn't worked for them. Phillip Rivers did not work for them. They had Jacoby Brissett. Obviously Brissett worked for them, but he wasn't like starting caliber quarterback. And then now they just had Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz might have stayed healthy, but we all know how injury prone of a quarterback he is, and is also not a good quarterback. I'm just going to be completely honest. He really isn't. Another is Michael Pierce. So here's a name we don't talk about a lot. What is he going to do with the Michael Pierce contract? Because Michael Pierce is expected to make $20 million or $10 million in 2022. That's not terrible. That's not that bad. But you have to look at Michael Pierce and say to yourself, well, he's an injury-prone player. He gets injured just about every season. On top of that, when he gets injured, we see a little player by the name of Armond Watt step in. Armond Watt was tremendous, outstanding, phenomenal, and one of the only bright spots on this Vikings defense this last season, and can certainly be our nose tackle going forward. So you have to look, Michael Pierce, do you want to pay a player $10 million in 2022 when he's 29 years old? I don't. You can look to Armond Watt to being our future starter. You can trade him away, save yourself $8.5 million in cap space if you trade him after June 1st. That is a good option. If you don't trade him, you can also cut him. There's a lot of roster moves that can help this Vikings team because, like I've said, the future for this team relies on our young guys. The future for this team relies on our young guys. Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne. Those are the couple names on offense. Our entire offensive line, all young guys. We have to continue to just load up in the trenches. That's what the Vikings have to do because that's what Super Bowl teams do, and that's why the 49ers are in the NFC Championship game right now, is because they completely load up on the defense and offensive line. That's what the Vikings need to focus more on here, too, because we need more pass rushers. Our pass rush is not looking very good. Another name, speaking of pass rushers, Danielle Hunter, top 7 pass rusher in the NFL, gets injured every year. I don't want to see Danielle Hunter go, but if Danielle Hunter asks for a trade, it could benefit the Vikings to trade away Danielle Hunter. He's lived up to his contract. I mean, 24, 23, or 13 million, whatever he's making. It's not that bad. That's very good. But you have to look at how injury prone of a player that he is. And if there's a team willing to trade for him, I'm okay with that. Now, yes, Danielle Hunter is excellent, and I don't want to see him go. But you have to look at what's best for this team. And you have to look to cutting that salary so you can find future starters. There's a lot of players entering free agency that I had my eyes on. I mean, I love Harold Landry, outside linebacker for the Tennessee Titans. I love him, and I want him on our defense really bad. That's a player I would love to see. I would love to see Harold Landry on our team. So there's a lot of options here. And then restructuring contracts. I don't know fully what his ideas are on restructuring contracts. Adofo-Mensah, he has a master's in economics that he got at Stanford and was also at Princeton. So I'm assuming that he doesn't like completely screwing yourselves in cap space. Because here's the thing with restructuring contracts. When you restructure a contract, all you're doing is screwing yourselves over in a couple years. There is very, very rare cases where it makes sense. When the Vikings restructured, what was it, Kirk Cousins' contract a couple years ago, or was that last year? I think that was last year, actually. Or when they restructured Harrison Smith's contract. Now you look at them, $45 million for Kirk Cousins, and whatever Harrison Smith is making is just ridiculous amount of money that you don't have to pay. All you're doing is screwing yourself over in a couple of years. I really hope that he doesn't restructure anybody's contract. I do, because when you restructure a contract, especially with how the Vikings are right now. Now, I understand. I'm gonna level the playing field here. Vikings can compete in 2022. The reason why is because Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams might be out of Green Bay. So the Vikings can compete next year. They can win their division for the first time since 2017. They can win their division and get a home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. They can, likely as a 3 or 4 seed in the playoffs. They can compete. But here's the thing. When you look at this, are the Vikings going to compete for a Super Bowl? It's tough to say. It's really tough to say. And you have to look at this right now because with the Vikings' current roster, how it's looking right now, we have a lot of talent, but we also have a lot of holes on our team. How is he going to fill those holes? I hope that he can, because he can't handle money. He has a master's in economics. What I'm hoping is that he can take undervalued players. Like I said, Chase Daniels, right guard for the Chicago Bears, very underrated guard. Harold Landry, one of the most underrated outside linebackers that I would love to see in purple and gold in our defense. Cornerbacks. How is he going to handle the cornerback position? You have to look to the young guys because this is how we're going to compete for a Super Bowl in the future because we're not a win-now team. We aren't. We might win our division next year. We're not a win-now team. We're in a rebuilding year. We might make the playoffs in a rebuilding year like the Eagles did. The Eagles just made the playoffs, easy outs in the playoffs. They just made the playoffs on a rebuilding year. They had a lot of stars on that team, but also they had way too many holes in order to be able to compete in the playoffs. So they made the playoffs on a rebuilding year. Vikings can do the same, making the playoffs on a rebuilding year. If you look at this, though, it's a good hire.